Harari, you are asking for freedom in a system designed for total control. When you make a choice today, any choice, what you watch, what you read, what you believe, who you vote for, what you buy, what you fear, what you want, how certain are you that the choice is actually yours? Not in the legal sense. No one forced you. You clicked, you decided, you acted. The freedom was formal and real. But how much of what led you to that specific choice, the desire that motivated it, the information that shaped it, the emotional state that primed it, the social environment that made it feel natural, how much of that was constructed for you by systems you did not choose and cannot fully see, whose interests in your choice are not the same as your interests in making it? This is the question that Yuval Noah Harari has placed at the center of his analysis of the current moment, and his answer is more uncomfortable than most people are prepared to receive. The systems within which you exercise your freedom are not neutral infrastructure. They are not passive conduits through which your authentic preferences flow freely toward expression. They are, in their design and in their deepest operational logic, systems that benefit from shaping what you want before you want it, from constructing the desire before you feel it, from engineering the conditions within which your choices are made in specific directions, so that the choice you feel most freely making is also the choice the system most needs you to make. This is what Harari means when he says that you are asking for freedom in a system designed for total control. Not the crude total control of an authoritarian state, which operates through visible coercion and explicit censorship and is therefore recognized as control by the people it operates on. Something more sophisticated and therefore more effective. The control of a system that operates at the level of desire formation rather than desire expression. That shapes not what you are permitted to do, but what you want to do. That reaches not into your behavior, but into the construction of the self that produces the behavior. A control that does not feel like control because it operates precisely where the self is made. The most powerful form of control in human history has never been physical force. Physical force is expensive, generates resistance, and has a ceiling. The most powerful and most durable form of control has always been the ability to shape what people believe they want, because a person who wants what the system needs them to want does not need to be coerced. They comply freely, enthusiastically, and with the genuine sense of autonomous agency that makes their compliance far more stable and far more comprehensive than forced compliance could ever be. Every sophisticated system of social organization throughout history has understood this. Religious institutions shaped what people believed about the nature of good and evil, and thereby shaped what they wanted, long before they needed to resort to the cruder instruments of inquisition and punishment. Political ideologies shaped the desires, fears, and sense of identity of their adherents in ways that made the most demanding sacrifices feel not like coercion, but like free expression of the self. The most effective empires were not the ones that ruled primarily through military force. They were the ones that made their subjects want to be part of the empire, that shaped the cultural and psychological landscape of conquered peoples in ways that made the imperial arrangement feel natural rather than imposed. What is new in the current moment is not the ambition to exercise this form of control. The ambition is ancient. What is new is the specific technology available for its implementation. Technology that makes the older instruments of desire formation look primitive by comparison. The digital platforms that now mediate so much of daily life for billions of people are not merely communication tools. They are, in their most fundamental design, systems for the collection of behavioral data about human beings at unprecedented scale and granularity, the construction of predictive models of those human beings based on that data, and the use of those models to shape the information environment within which the modeled humans make their choices, in directions that serve the platform's interests in maximizing engagement and the revenue that engagement generates. The data collected is not merely surface behavioral data. Every click, every pause, every search, every reaction, every pattern of attention and inattention feeds into systems that are constructing, in real time, a model of you that includes your specific fears, your specific desires, your specific sources of social anxiety and social validation, your specific cognitive vulnerabilities, your specific political sensitivities, your specific relationship with authority, uncertainty, and tribal belonging. This model becomes, over time and with sufficient data, more accurate in its predictions about your behavior than your own conscious self-model. It knows what will make you anxious before you feel the anxiety. It knows what will feel validating before you reach for the validation. It knows what emotional state you will be in tomorrow, based on the pattern of your states over the past month. And it uses that knowledge not to serve you but to influence you. The content you see, the sequence in which you see it, the emotional framing in which it arrives, the social context that surrounds it, all of this is selected and arranged by the model to produce specific behavioral outputs from you. Primarily the behaviors that keep you on the platform longer, engaging more, generating more data, creating more advertising value. But in a world where these platforms have become the primary infrastructure of political communication, the same modeling and targeting capabilities are also available to political actors who wish to shape not merely your commercial behavior, but your political perceptions, your civic identity, and your vote. The specific mechanism through which this operates is not conspiracy. It does not require any single actor to be orchestrating a comprehensive plan of control. It requires only that the incentive structures of the systems involved reward the shaping of desire over the honest service of the users who nominally own their own attention. And the incentive structures do reward this, consistently and systematically, because the economic model of attention capture depends on users whose attention is reliably available, whose engagement is reliably producible, and whose desires are reliably responsive to the specific stimuli the platform can provide. A genuinely autonomous user, one whose desires are genuinely their own and therefore unpredictable and not reliably responsive to algorithmic prompting, is economically less valuable to the system than a user whose desires have been shaped into reliable patterns. The system's incentive is therefore structurally aligned with the gradual erosion of genuine autonomy in its users, not because anyone designed it to be malevolent, but because the economic logic of the business model produces this alignment as its natural and predictable consequence. What does it mean to be free inside this system? What does it mean to make authentic choices when the conditions within which you choose have been specifically constructed to make certain choices more likely? The question is not merely philosophical. It is intensely practical, because the answer determines what you need to actually do to recover and maintain the kind of freedom that the word is supposed to mean. The first and most fundamental response is the development of genuine self-knowledge, not the curated self-narrative that social media encourages, the carefully managed presentation of who you are to an audience, but the genuinely uncomfortable knowledge of how your desires and beliefs were formed, what specific stimuli reliably produce what specific emotional and behavioral responses in you, what the gap is between what you believe you care about after honest reflection and what your behavioral patterns actually suggest you prioritize. This knowledge is difficult to develop not because it requires unusual intelligence, but because it requires unusual honesty and unusual willingness to sit in the silence that honest self-examination requires. Silence that the platform is specifically designed to prevent by ensuring that the alternative to silence is always immediately and compellingly available. The second response is the deliberate reconstruction of what might be called informational sovereignty, the recovery of meaningful agency over the information environment within which you form your picture of the world. This means actively choosing your sources rather than passively receiving what the algorithm selects. It means seeking out perspectives that the algorithm would be unlikely to deliver because they do not optimize for engagement. It means treating the ease with which a piece of content reached you as evidence of what interests its delivery serves rather than evidence of its importance. And it means recognizing that the emotional intensity of content is often negatively correlated with its epistemic value. That the things that make you most immediately anxious or outraged are frequently the things that the engagement optimization system has most effectively calibrated to do exactly that. And that the calm and the nuanced and the genuinely complex are systematically underrepresented in algorithmically curated information environments. The third response concerns community. In a specific and demanding sense, the isolation of the individual facing algorithmic control alone is part of what makes the control most effective. Human beings are social animals whose sense of reality is substantially constructed through shared reference with the people around them. When the information environments of the people in your community have all been personalized in similar directions, the shared reality that the community constructs reinforces the algorithmic construction rather than providing friction against it. The communities that are most genuinely useful as resources for maintaining cognitive autonomy against algorithmic influence are communities characterized by genuine diversity of perspective, genuine commitment to honest disagreement, and genuine face-to-face encounter that the algorithm cannot reach and cannot curate. You are asking for freedom in a system designed for total control. That is the situation. The freedom you have is real in the formal sense that no one is physically preventing you from acting differently than the system would prefer. But the freedom you have is limited in ways that most people have not yet clearly recognized by the degree to which the desires, beliefs, and sense of self you bring to your choices have been shaped by systems whose interests in those choices are not your interests. Recognizing this limitation is not an occasion for despair. It is the beginning of the only response that actually matters. Because the freedom that is available inside this system is the freedom that has always been most essential and most difficult. Not the freedom to act without constraint, which has never existed for anyone, but the freedom of a person who sees the constraints clearly, who understands how they operate, who maintains genuine contact with their own authentic experience rather than the experience the system has been constructing, and who chooses, with full awareness of what they are choosing, to inhabit their own life rather than the version of it that the system finds most profitable. That freedom is available. It is not given. It is made through the daily, effortful, imperfect work of genuine self-attention, genuine epistemic responsibility, and genuine human community that is the only counterweight to a system of unprecedented sophistication that is built, in its deepest logic, around the gradual erosion of exactly those things. The system was designed for total control. Your clear seeing of that design is the beginning of the only freedom that is real, not comfortable, not complete, but real. And in the conditions of the current moment, that is worth everything. There is a specific dimension of this control that deserves honest examination, because it operates in a domain most people consider entirely their own. The domain of emotion, of feeling, of the inner experience that seems most authentically private, most genuinely beyond the reach of any external system. And yet it is precisely this domain that the most sophisticated systems of algorithmic influence most actively target, because it is in the emotional register that the most reliable behavioral responses are produced. The emotional states that the engagement optimization systems of digital platforms most effectively generate are not random. They are specifically the emotional states that research has identified as most reliably associated with continued engagement and with the specific behavioral responses the platforms need from their users. Anxiety, because anxious people seek more information and check their devices more frequently. Outrage, because outraged people share content more reliably and generate more comments and reactions. Social anxiety, because people who feel their social standing is uncertain seek more validation and spend more time in the social environment where that validation arrives. Fear, because frightened people are more susceptible to tribal identification and more reliably motivated by the content that tells them who to fear. These emotional states are not merely the incidental byproduct of content that happens to be emotionally charged. They are, in many cases, the intended output of systems optimizing for the behavioral responses that these states most reliably produce. The content that generates them is not selected because it is important or accurate or genuinely relevant to the people receiving it. It is selected because it reliably produces the emotional states that reliably produce the behavioral outputs that the platform's economic model requires. The person who understands this understands something about their own emotional life that is genuinely uncomfortable and genuinely liberating. Uncomfortable because it means that a significant proportion of the emotional states they experience while inhabiting the digital information environment are not authentic responses to genuine realities. They are engineered products of a system that has learned, through the processing of billions of behavioral data points, exactly what kinds of stimuli produce what kinds of emotional responses in people with their specific psychological profile. Liberating because, once understood, this recognition makes those emotional states available for examination rather than compelling in their immediate demand for response. The anxiety that arrives after 20 minutes of scrolling can be recognized as an artifact of what was scrolled rather than as an accurate signal about the actual state of the world. The outrage that fills the chest during a news session can be recognized as a product of the specific curation that delivered those specific stories in that specific sequence, rather than as a direct response to the objective severity of the events described. This recognition does not make the emotions unreal. It does not make the events that generated them genuinely unimportant. But it introduces, between the stimulus and the response, the space that genuine freedom requires. The space in which you can ask whether this emotional state is an accurate response to something that actually warrants it, or whether it is primarily the product of a system whose interests in producing it have nothing to do with your actual well-being or your accurate understanding of the world. Viktor Frankl described the space between stimulus and response as the location of human freedom. The systems of algorithmic control are, among other things, a comprehensive and sophisticated attack on that space, a systematic narrowing of the interval between stimulus and response to the point where genuine reflection before reaction becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. Reclaiming that space, insisting on its existence, practicing the specific attentional discipline that allows you to inhabit it rather than being swept directly from stimulus to behavioral output, is the most important practical expression of the freedom that you are asking for in the system designed for total control. The system is real. The control it exercises is real. And the freedom that is available within it is also real. It is the freedom of genuine awareness, of clear seeing, of the daily practice of being actually present in your own life, rather than in the constructed version of it that the system finds most profitable. That freedom is not given, it is made. And the making of it is the most important work that the current moment is asking of anyone who understands clearly enough what the moment is. Ask for freedom. See the system clearly. And build the freedom in the only place it can actually be built, in the quality of attention and awareness, and honest self-knowledge that the system is least equipped to construct for you, and that only you can develop for yourself. That is the beginning. And in the conditions of the current moment, it is also the most important thing.